this producer,
a little bit
Unfiltered.
about your experience.
Woo!
Okay, I am a clinical hypnotherapist at True Hypnotherapy in Sacramento, a consciousness researcher, and the former president of OPUS, which is the Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support. So they would be a board of different people, different backgrounds, some doctors, maybe some lawyers, who look at different cases that come in. So I've had a great opportunity to be exposed to lots of different realities.
Interesting that you use the word reality. My first question to you is this shit real? Is this shit real? Everyone wants to know. What is your having experienced or having spoken to people who had so many different experiences, and you've had some yourself? What is it real?
It is real. It is absolutely real for a percentage of the cases or information that you hear. There's a lot of misinformation, and there's a lot of people talk about particular relationships with cosmic beings that don't exist. And it's difficult to have to be the one to tell them that for whatever reason, this information, this has been falsely placed into your memory or into your awareness. And we have to sort of figure out the root. But that being said, why then would they choose that particular entity to create a relationship? There's just as much importance in that as what is real. It's really what is real to the experiencer. But on the more physical, third dimensional reality answer, absolutely. The universe is vast, and there are many types of life, many types of beings that exist. Some outside of our ability to comprehend, as some who look on us with disdain, and some who have this ability to gently and lovingly guide. They don't give you anything. Everything sort of needs to be earned, and you have to sort of do the work. But once you begin to take those steps, you begin to encounter entities that are the only really way to express it is they're angelic in a way because of their unconditional love and acceptance.
So now, when you use the term angelic, this is going to segue us into the Bible. You use the term angelic, and I'm wondering if these entities, these beings, are they called extraterrestrials today, and perhaps back in biblical times they were called angels? Is it the same, or is there a difference between an angel and an extraterrestrial?
Well, I think that there's been a lot of confusion as to which beings descending from the heavens or the sky are actually divine, and which are just merely extraterrestrials exploring the galaxies in which we share. I mean, space. And since we have tales and lore and documentation of this type of being coming to the earth from the very beginning of time, so there is a spiritual essence to it. So the angelic kingdom isn't necessarily biblical so much as a higher frequency of more light beings that wouldn't be manifested into a physical body that we see, as this is not their regular state. Their normal state is that of light, and they manifest or appear to people based on that person's consciousness or what they expect to see, very much like at the time of death. If you're a Christian or a Jew, or it doesn't matter, whatever you believe is going to happen, there's a good chance that that will happen in the beginning, at least, as you're eased into a different reality, a different way of existing. if you see us as the light within, much like a genie in a bottle or the genetics in the body. When the body falls, the essence rises. Many people have out of body experiences or near death experiences, lucid dreaming, or astral trips. You might have it induced through many different ways, but the idea is that you're really beginning to see that there's more to reality. So, yes, it's real.
Wow. Okay. So when people have experiences, let's say near-death experiences or experiences taking drugs or just, really great meditation, what have
Mm.
you, what are they actually speaking to someone? Is there, in any case, are they actually speaking to someone that came here from a different planet?
Well, different planet or a different dimension, but
Right.
I mean, but we also have to include in that parallel universes because all of these frequencies, just so if we were to turn on a radio right now here in my room, I could tune into AM or FM, a plethora of different stations. All of those airwaves are right there. I'm just going to tune into one at a time.
Mm.
And just like the different frequencies or the physics of different realities, they're all happening or coexisting. We can tune into them. That it's our ability to create that resonance. And we do that, yeah, when the conscious critical mind, that beta brain wave is relaxed, where it's turned down. And the other energy now, which is probably the truer, more authentic self, has this opportunity to rise and become the dominant aspect of your consciousness. The critical thinking mind is back here, it's turned down, and you're moving now into that flow. And many people will feel a slight vibration, and you just have to roll into that energy. I mean, I personally have had so many out of body experiences that I had so many. I thought that I must be dying and that this is my soul practicing leaving my body because whenever I reached that deep level of meditation, I would step right out of my body, walk around and look at myself and think to myself, what does this mean? How far can I go? What does this mean? Because this is me, but I see myself there. And so after probably 20 of those experiences back to back, I finally ended up having an extraordinary lucid dream about a place. And then I later driving aimlessly this way and that, not thinking about where I was going, but deeply thinking about the experiences I was having. I literally drove right to the very temple that I had dreamed of. And
Wow.
everything to the exact detail was perfect. And when I walked up and they opened the gates just this much, and they said, why have you come? I said, I've come to meditate. And they said, how did you know about us? I said, I dreamed you. And in that moment, off as fast as the monk could go, she scurried to bring back Master. And they stood in front of me on the other side of the gates, pointing at my head and talking. And I'm like, okay, why are you pointing at my head? Let's speak some English here. And Master said, you are wearing the bun of an initiate. And they opened the gates. And then for several years, I would meditate sometimes 18 hours a day, 18-hour meditation marathons with the monk where I learned how to control my mind. And I'll tell you, I learned more about other worlds and other beings than the thousands of cases that I have done in the 30 plus years that I've been doing this work. And it was that experience of the recognition of that energy within me and how you can become the master, and that the master already is you, and that we just resonate into what always was, what always will be, whatever could be. We begin to see that we're one with truly the grand of totality, and that there's a soul consciousness, not just an intellectual consciousness of awareness, but when that light inside the human is ignited, and I see it in so many beings, the humans, I see this light in them. Some it's dim, and some so wounded, but still there's this hope, right? This inspiration, right? To be inspired, right, is inspirational. That's inside of us. And the way out there to know it all is to go in. You have to move into the true self, the authentic self, and just begin to accept everything the way it is in this moment. And when we can do that, we begin to create change. You cannot change what you cannot accept. So you look at the things in your life. I'm this, I'm that. I have cause and effect. It's all okay. I behave or I'm triggered with this again, cause and effect. It's all okay. Figure all that out and settle in and settle down and begin to see, where our next steps are. But we begin to see, much bigger being than is reflected on the outside. But the truth really is inside all of us. And it doesn't matter what religion or belief system that you identify with. It's really ultimately what brings you to the light. In Buddhism, they say, if you meet Buddha, then you're done. That's it. It's time now to begin your own journey, not that of another sage or another soul who's come to help teach. There are many people on the planet who are trying to teach a particular truth. There's a lot going on to distract us, and there's a lot interfering with our minds and our belief system. And right now, in this moment, there are 52 wars involving 90 countries in this moment. And that's been it's been the case for a very long time. And we have to begin to see that it's not the people fighting, that these are engineered for greed and for many other reasons. And they have nothing to do with the propagation of the ultimate health and well-being of humans or human rights. I mean, there's a lot of manipulation going on, and sadly, that divine spiritual energy that has come or descended onto the earth through extraterrestrials and other beings has been taken over by man, and many have corrupted it. And
So,
all we need to do is look and see where that corruption is. Because there's been a continuous misdirection of energy, bending it away from feminine or divine feminine energy and pushing this harsher patriarchal fear-based ruling energy, which did absolutely change the way society began to unfold, because right from the start, there was not equality in what people were taught in the Bible, of course, is that Eve was Adam's first wife, which there's lots of information that supersedes the Bible, where they speak of Eve as a universal goddess responsible for creating the feminine humanoid to begin with. I'm intrigued with ascension, and I'm intrigued with human attainment and our opportunity to master the self towards actualization in creating not only the life that we want to live, but creating a world that we can share peacefully. We have these opportunities to move towards human attainment. People ask me all the time, help me find my purpose in life. Like, what is my purpose? And, off the top of my head, we all share the same purpose. And that same purpose is to work towards human attainment, taking steps towards personal empowerment, towards mindfulness, towards actualization. And funny, as these things begin to unfold, we begin to have this internal equanimity, this ability to be very well grounded, no matter what the chaos in the world is. And we begin to tap into those higher energies that are psychic.
Can we also tap into why drugs really help doing that? I mean,
Okay, there's a lot. I'm sure you're talking about like ayahuasca,
I mean,
MDMA.
I'm talking about mushrooms. I never tried
Oh,
ayahuasca,
mushrooms. Okay. Okay.
but yeah, for me specifically, I had a divine experience when I took mushrooms, and everything that you have written and sent over to me, I felt when I was on mushrooms. Like that was the realization. After I did mushrooms, which was just the one time, by the way, I told people when people asked me if I was, Jewish, religious, this, that, and I said, I've gone cosmic now. Like my religion is
Oh,
now, I've gone cosmic. It's no longer like I married someone who wasn't Jewish, and everyone's like, is he going to convert? Is he going to convert? I said, but you don't understand. He's cosmic too. Like there's no converting, that doesn't even make sense. If you're on
no.
a different level.
Yeah. Well, what happens is when the consciousness becomes expanded, really, in the words of John Lennon, whatever gets you to the light is all right.
I like that.
I could sing it more, but I won't. Oh, we lost me. Huh. I don't, oh, there we go. Okay. But that's, whatever gets you to the light is all right. Of course, it's all with intention too.
Right.
But as that aspect of the consciousness begins to unfold, what you're really recognizing, Nicole, is the multidimensional aspect of the human soul. You're beginning to recognize when you say, more cosmic. Yeah, division is created in the third dimensional reality. The third dimensional reality is dualistic in nature. So there'll be opposing forces continuously from masculine to feminine, up, down, dark, light, north, south, continuously understanding that there's this duality. So when you begin to rise above that duality, then you're beginning to see the higher consciousness, the more expanded self, the multidimensional nature that we can understand reality in more than one dimension. I mean, I like to say that when we look at life in different dimensions, the fish in the sea, although they have a beautiful world and there's unbelievable depths of ocean and all kinds of life, they have no idea what walks on this earth or flies in the sky. So they are actually living in more of a confined reality, even a second dimensional reality. It's only until they're pulled out of that, much like us, when we're pulled out of our third dimensional reality, that we begin to see that there's a whole lot more all around us that we had no idea about, because we've been swimming in our own ocean of reality that's been not created by us solely, but a combination of creation, some not entirely positive. And I say that meaning it wasn't designed for us to hit our human potential, to unfold, to stand in our power. Our civilizations are designed to be subservient, to have an enslaved mentality, to think that you have to worship a god, when in fact, the original definition of the word worship is Sumerian and Mesopotamian, is work for, which is entirely different than to adore and idolize. To work for means to be enslaved or employed on some level. And you're working for them, you're doing their bidding.
It's so interesting because in Hebrew, the word Adoni means my master, like Adoni or Adonai, and that's the word for God a lot in the Hebrew Bible. And so is the word Elohim, which is a plural word. It means the powerful ones in plural. And
Or the
it's
mighty ones.
the mighty ones. It's interchangeable always. It's
Yeah.
Elohim and Adonai are mostly the ones that are, you know, like when God is referred to, those are the words. Or
Yeah,
Hamakom,
those
like the
aren't real
place.
gods.
Yeah, Hamakom, the place, or Hashem, the name.
Yeah. Okay, so those are um they're not gods, they're demigods. These are entities who harvest jealousy, who create war, who create imbalance and mistrust, conflict and death and famine,
Well,
and and
mhm.
make you test your faith, where because that's their own insecurity. That's their own insecurity. And for God who previously claimed that they know all of our thoughts, why would one create such a barbaric test? No, these are not gods. Okay, these are more evolved, technically and perhaps spiritually, entities, probably Anunnaki descendants. And those, although they were powerful and mighty, there is only one God, and it's not called God. There is no word for the true one. It is the one, is the one source. It supersedes all that, past the duality of um, God, because I am your father, or the master. God should set an example of the best parent. And those are bad, bad parents. How dare they be so hypocritical and put so much negativity on the humans? And the humans are the word hue is the measurement that we use to measure the saturation or the density of light. Okay, light, purity of light. Man comes from the word manifestation, to come into the physical or to be embodied. A human is a light embodied being, and race and gender are subcategories of that. That is the only dualistic understanding, is the race and gender. Those divisions were created as it was descended into the third dimensional reality, that more denser reality. But the human is a brilliant, beautiful entity who has the most unbelievable opportunity to stand in their own power and work together when they're not being tricked and manipulated. And that's what's happened through religion. You can't tell. Oh, look at the corruption in religion. Why is it so corrupt? Because it's not natural, the way that it's unfolded. No, the
The way that
idea
it's
is to,
interpreted, the way that it's
yeah,
interpreted, I would say, is not natural. Well, because
Yes,
that's how
that's
we
right.
started talking about it, right? Is that it's always used, an interpretation of something is always used in a negative way by people that are trying to control you, right? So like going back to what I said, Hamakom, Hashem, the place, this and that, like the way God is actually described in the Jewish Bible is someone who is not this demigod manipulator. It's someone who is the best parent, like someone who is empathetic. He has empathy. He understands you. He's all knowing and is merciful. Like these are the words that are used to describe,
Yeah.
you know. And the reason
All
why it's,
merciful.
yeah, merciful is a huge
Yeah.
one.
A-
Yeah.
And that's because that's a higher frequency
Hmm.
emotional energy. It's one of the things that humans work towards in that level of attainment. Yes, it's interpretation and
Yeah.
corruption, not in so much of the words that were given to us for guidance, but in for those that took that as their
Right.
power and
Right.
made themselves kings and queens and heads of
Right.
state and began to rule
Yeah.
from a different perspective. All people have in common the same basic desires and needs. We want to be loved and accepted. We want our basic needs met, shelter, food, but above all else, we want freedom. We want freedom. We want to be free. We want to be able to speak our truth, to be whatever it is or however creative we want to be. We want to be free to unfold, to tap into our potential, to see what it is that we can become without somebody else telling us what we should be or what we can't be, or allowing people to be just whatever is on the menu of the day. There's a lot of things happening that's changing the identity or what people identify with. But generally, all humans have in common the desire to be loved and accepted and have their basic needs met. And all religions, most religions, teach that there
Oh,
is a heaven. I,
I lost you for a
I
sec. All
yeah, a
religions.
lot of all religions teach that there is consequences for your actions and that you are loved, hopefully, by a power much larger than your ability to understand. Outside of your conscious awareness, you're loved and supported and guided like there's somebody out there on your side. That's really what the religions should teach, but actually, what they end up teaching, whether it's on purpose or not, they teach division. Some make the men sit on one side, the women on the other side. Some wouldn't even let women teach or speak in church. Would all man comes through woman, please. I mean, even the Easter Bunny, that the fact that they show him as a male is just so weird. Easter Bunny should have been a female because that's where all the eggs are. Come on, people. There's this just continuous little misdirection throughout all aspects of our understanding. And religion, really, what it's done is it has not lifted the people up, it's turned them against each other. Every
So, I was
war is about that.
at what I was getting at, which I thought we were going down the happy route. I just feel like because we were talking about looking for answers and being guided, and I feel like,
Mm.
maybe religion, how it's been interpreted to us, that's where everyone gets lost. But the original scripture, I think in all cases is really just like a guidebook on how to be happy and how to be good and how to, you know, figure out purpose, and it provides meaning, and that's where that's.
Isn't our purpose to be the best human that we can be and to share in the abundance that the earth offers? On this planet, there's enough for everybody, just like there's enough air for all of us to breathe. there are enough resources for all of us to share. I mean, there are some beautiful things taught in religion, but does that need to be taught? Is it's not human nature to be kind and generous and loving and trusting and innocent? It truly is human nature. That is our nature to be like that. All you have to do is watch innocence, and you'll see how kind and generous it really is. So again, it's being pitted against each other. That's, that's what religion ultimately ended up doing. But again, that's not what the intent was, right?
Right.
The intent was to offer a guideline. But in the Bible, I mean, even with the Ten Commandments, as simple as that, the funny thing is that they were actually written 600 years before that in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And this is where the problem is that all of the stuff, it's basically all the same. It's just that claiming it creates superiority,
Hmm.
and where people feel more superior, and therefore that makes somebody inferior. And when a person is empowered, or a people are empowered, it doesn't matter what your neighbor does. It doesn't take anything away from you. You can allow them. Everybody's entitled to their journey. They're allowed to unfold in their own way. Again, whatever gets them to the light, right?
Right.
But it shouldn't take anything away from our own beliefs. And I think what religion should really teach, and just religion or anything that starts with re, is generally backwards. Rewind, reverse, retrograde, regret. Religion. A legion was an army of 600 soldiers. And when the people began free thinking, they had to realign, creating this religion that brought the people back to behaving as the hierarchy at the time would want them to. So even though there is all this beautiful stuff, maybe the time is that we don't have to look outside of ourselves for those answers. That if you were to sit in silence and ask yourself the bigger questions, can assure you bigger answers would come. When people begin to work with their own energies, using the solar plexus, which is, those two clusters of nerves that antenna out into our environment, picking up emotional energies and information, hits us, you get that gut, punch or flutter, right? Right. It's literally the end of the nerve endings are all flutter. That's that butterfly feeling, of course, but when we begin to work with our own body and our own energies, you can tap into and get your answers to the deeper questions. The moment of death and the moment we're on the other side, they're not checking to see what religion you were. They're checking to see that you took steps to be the best human that you can be, and that you exhibited the opportunity to learn from your mistakes, that you didn't shame or blame anyone else for them, that we again take responsibility for our own actions, not because they're good or bad, because good and bad are conceptualized ideas created by the humans, and the higher energies supersede that, where bad and good don't exist. It's a higher energy, it's above that. It's very difficult to explain if you haven't experienced it. It's this lack of time and space. It's this energy where good and bad just simply don't exist. That's the dualistic nature of our third dimension. That's when you begin to free yourself from that. That's when you tap into those cosmic feelings that people talk about so much.
Okay. So take us, please, from, the lost books of the Bible. You said that there's literature out there
Did you
that
freeze, Nicole?
I think we're frozen.
Uh-oh.
We're frozen. You'll come back.
You froze
Oh,
there
there
for
you
a bit.
are. Yeah, I know. I
Yeah.
stopped. It says my
Okay.
connection. Are you back? Can you see me now?
Yes.
Okay. I really would, you spoke about scriptures and literature that predates the Bible, and you spoke about the reinterpretation of Eve. Can you take us through that?
Yes, there's this Eve should be associated uh, with some of the higher divine feminine energies, as the Eve that we hear about in the Bible was not the first Eve. Eve was a higher goddess, a universal goddess that mated with a universal God that began to create all types of other humanoids, not just the ones you see walking on this planet, but ones that live on other planets as well. But that energy, that divine spiritual energy, began to change. So when they talk about almost every belief system, talks about the Great Flood. They all have a version of it. They all have a version of this divine intervention, but mostly Eve, what she's bringing is light. Light is what Eve's interpretation of life was. It's a connection to that higher energy that will enrich any person's life if you begin to look at that. And some of the ancient doctrine does go back to like ancient Egypt, to even other societies at the time. Now, some of my research has moved me into a weird field of an empire that had a lot of information, and that some of that information has been lost. And that the Tartarians or Tartar, the empire, that they say, if some people say, well, it's made up, it's not true. But I actually collect and have for many years dictionaries and encyclopedias from different centuries, and I have the maps of it, as other people do too. I mean, it can wipe out a lot of history, but there are always books, and I'm a book person. And so they had a lot of information about particular deities, and they were brought different technologies, and one of that technologies was the free energy. So when you look at any dome shaped temples, or the spirals, or even the pyramids and the obelisks, those were all designed to either capture energy or send. Like the obelisks were used as antennas, as they were capped in both silver and gold. And now we see this new, I don't know how true it is, but recently they're uncovering some new images of things that were discovered under the Great Pyramid, where it's made to look like a power plant,
Hmm.
in alignment with everything. So those gods of ancient Egypt inherited the pyramids. Not They didn't build them; they inherited them. There was a time when there was a lot of knowledge on the earth, where there was a golden age of understanding and equality, and there was free energy. And when we look at the goddess energies and we talk about goddess energy at that time, it is Eve, it's also Isis, it's also Kuan Yin. It's all of these female deities that have their own energy being imbued upon the consciousness of women for thousands of years. I mean, all we have to do really is begin to tap into that, and that flow of Eve energy is going to show you the beginning, the very cycle in which we have life. So we can continue to come to the earth until we reach that human attainment.
And how is her role reinterpreted, or what she stands for?
Well, she was later downgraded and to being created out of a rib of Adam, and then shown as his first wife, but his first wife actually was Lilith. And
Who's
so
Lilith?
then,
I never heard of Lilith.
really,
Yeah, I've never heard of Lilith.
Lilith was Adam's first wife, and he complained about her as she had power. She actually moved and flew into different parts of Asia, bringing lots of knowledge and energy like Enlil from the Anunnaki. Then that was his first wife. Okay, he couldn't get along with her because she was too powerful. Then he got a second wife, and they called her Eve. And she was told that she was made from Adam's rib. And yeah, that's not how it works. Not even a little. No. So
How does it work?
oh, the birds and the bees have everything to do it. Yeah, no. So Eve, she actually was a human, and so was Adam. They weren't divine beings. They were put into a place that they called the garden, they were really, some people believe, trapped and imprisoned as society was unfolding all over the world and all other places, and empires being built, yet they were here segregated trying to create this following. But again, Eve brought knowledge to Adam. In the moment the God asked, why did you take the knowledge or eat from the apple, which was representing the knowledge at the time? First thing he did was point his finger and say, she made me do it. Made me. It was a simple offering. He could have said no. I mean, it was, she made me do it, right? And so Adam, right from the get-go, I mean, he could not get along with Lilith because he was unable to handle her power. And then when Eve began to have knowledge, which was really all it was, as even today, higher knowledge is shown by a serpent through all kinds of different cultures, in particularly the Asian cultures, dragons and serpents and air elements, bringing anything associated to that brings intelligent information. And so she took the information, and he couldn't handle it. He blamed her, shamed her, and tried to get her in trouble. I mean, that was very wimpy about him. Okay. So there is your problem right there. People are taught that they were like the only two people on the world in the world, that there were no other humans. Obviously, that can't make sense, can it?
No other humans or
Is
no other beings?
well, no other people, because there were animals, and actually there were full societies. Okay, full indigenous cultures all over in every continent. Um, Going back now, which is really kind of the problem with religion, and here's where things might change with 21st century forward thinking and a different understanding, is that we can create timelines now. And we have uncovered skeletons of people that are 250,000 years old. It's not really adding up to the first people being, what, roughly 5 to 7,000 years old. Maybe we'll push it to 10 or 12, depending on whose, interpretation we're going to take of what time it is or what calendar date. But yeah, so there is a lot out there. And that's what happens when we have the secular education and religious education that just brings one point of view and says it's the only point of view. So I'll tell you this, it's better to ask a question, and to not be able to figure out an answer than to ask a question and be told you're not allowed to ask a question.
Well,
And that is,
thankfully, because I was always asking questions, we were always taught in my Jewish school to ask as many questions as possible. That's like that's the whole point, is you have to ask questions.
Yeah. Christianity, and Catholic, and all of the other um, things that are associated to those same primary religions, don't. There is one answer and one answer only, and you're not to question anything.
Well, again, like
Because,
is that's an interpretation. That's where the people kind of, got involved, but
yeah,
I wonder if original in the original scripture, I wonder if that's really what it says.
yeah, well, I'm not sure what we have that can, you know, unequivocally be represented
Hmm.
as original scripture.
Hmm.
Um, I think that uh, when you look at all of the different developments of humans, from Neanderthal, which Homo sapiens, way predating uh, religion, they had spirituality, okay, and they saw spiritual entities and beings. They, before they could even articulate it, they would like make gestures of, the soul flying. Uh, all of these different indigenous cultures that predate all of our um, doctrines.
Hmm.
And so that's when we have to say, well, how much of religion and which ones are really teaching that all of the answers are within you, and that as long as you're loving and kind and do no harm, and you're moving towards learning from your mistakes. And, that's really what all we need to do. It's not, you're not bad because you made a
Yeah.
mistake.
Can you take us through it? Can you take us through the different frequencies and ascension?
So, in my belief and experience, I know that in order for a human to ascend into a higher frequency, they have to do all of their emotional work. They have to understand and know the self. And in knowing yourself, new kindness happens, and you can see that we're all flawed. And if you can accept that in yourself, you can accept it in an other. So therefore, you become this channel of non-judgment. Right? And with that non-judgmental attitudes, and with the ability to self-accept and to begin to take steps towards our own self-development, we begin to heal. And the energy has to be that in fourth dimension, which is the protocol of the chronological order, third, fourth, fifth, and so on. So you move into the fourth dimension, there's instant manifestation of your thoughts. We manifest our thoughts here in the third dimension, but it takes time. We have a thought like, oh, maybe I'll create a weapon, maybe a sword. But first, I have to pull this granite from the ground. I have to figure out how to smelt it. We have to go through the process. We have to make it. In the fourth dimension, if you're there only because you've earned the place, you've earned the right to be there because you wish no harm. If you wish harm, you can't be there because everyone's full on telepathic with full awareness, and that frequency just doesn't, you can't be there being negative, insecure, jealous, hurt, doesn't exist. So you got to do all your work here, or you continue to come back into the third dimension until you reach that human attainment. You're going to have 10 lives, 100 lives, 500 lives. You're going to have the same experiences over and over again until you learn to know yourself and take those steps to heal in a way that allows inner peace, non judgment, true mercy, pity for another's plight, where you're you experience pity for someone. People don't have those emotions anymore. You have to have those emotions. You have to see the world in that way. You can't shut it off. It exists, and we're all here together. We're all in it together. So the more we create division among each other, the more internal division we have. When we begin to do all that work inside, you're as calm, grounded, like a tree, deeply rooted, but forever aspiring unto the light. You're moving in the right direction. And that's step one. Then you begin to develop. You become more psychic, you become more intuitive, hey, boomer, you become more aware, more loving, and you don't take things so personally, you know. I mean, even in my work, I can't tell you the people who throw me under the bus or will, for whatever reason, I don't even know. I can't even understand most of the time. It's because it's not mine. But you know, sometimes your own power and strength will trigger someone and they'll lash out, and that's how you know you're doing it right. But at the same time, we're supposed to mirror that back. Steps towards human attainment. When you get that, you move into the fourth, and each dimension has a lower, a middle, and a higher. And you elevate through expansion. It's acceptance. And absolutely 100% no fear. Fear
And
can't exist.
so what is ascension? Like, what is the definition of ascension?
Ascension is the soul rising on its way home. And it has to go through, let's just say this. Let's say that our prime source, where we're from initially, that light, that hue in human, let's just say it's 12th dimensional, okay? And that we all started way up here. But as we've descended through the different dimensions and are incarnated or reincarnated onto the planet at this moment, I'm going to tell you what, there's a little bit of us all the way through that. Our energy has left it all the way through, like running your hand through water. And we'll find our way home. But we've chosen this, okay? We've chosen to remember what we are. You know, we've chosen. Sometimes souls choose an accelerated learning path, and their life might be fraught with all kinds of pain and sorrow and trauma in early childhood. And the reason is for the child's soul to learn balance, to learn what is your energy and what is not your energy. And a child who's abused understands perpetrator energy. And sometimes it weakens them, but sometimes they can draw the line and know that there is true victimization. And even though you can't live there forever, people can be victimized, but you can learn from it. It's not about staying in anything, it's about learning from it and taking small, self assured, empowered steps towards our own actualization. Hopefully, we're all going to the same place. But, you know, it's like the difference between karma. You know, a lot of people think, oh, they'll talk about karma and they'll say, oh, I'm living this life because I must have been so bad or I must have been so good. No, not at all. It's a Sanskrit word. It means action. It's the way of the universe is to move forward, continuously move forward, right? And so that means that you learn from your mistakes and you just carry on, not tit for tat. So that is the true definition of karma. And when you begin to get that, then you elevate your awareness into dharma and then you teach what you've learned. It's a choice now.
Okay, so you're
It's one of the other steps in getting there.
okay. And then when you say frequencies, what does that actually mean?
So our heart, for instance, is 432 hertz. There's a Schumann resonance of the earth herself. There are different energies and frequencies that we resonate into. When we resonate between 2 points, A and B, you open a channel or a portal or whatever however big you want to make it, and you begin to draw information. So frequencies are specific energies that are heavier or denser or lighter than others. So, if you walk into a room and people have been fighting and it's all heavy and dense and you cannot feel it, picking up that frequency of emotional energy. But our we all have our own frequency. We all have our own energetic signature, so to speak. And that energetic signature can be tapped into. And that's where, when we're looking at 21st century technologies and moving forward, we have to broaden our understanding of the human mind and the information that it carries, and what can be dropped into it, or how the mind works. It's very important that people learn how to understand and use their mind now, because if you don't learn how to use your mind, somebody will use your mind for you. They will manipulate it or brainwash you through radionics, psychotronics, any level of alpha waves, electromagnetic low frequencies, all manipulate the frequency right in our brain. So here's the thing, Nicole: consciousness, and nobody can say for sure what it is, I guess, is so big that it has to be divided into multiple brain waves just within our own brain. We have to have a alpha, beta, theta, delta, gamma. We have to have all of these different brain waves all resonating in different frequencies. What you can do in your alpha brain wave, like say fly in a dream or breathe underwater in your alpha brain wave, you can't do that in your beta brain wave. It's different frequency.
So
And
are you also attaching love and compassion and empathy? Are these emotions also
those are the
on
highest. Oh,
those are okay, so those are now you're operating. So when you say ascension, you need self-awareness, this and that, and then finally you could see others. If you feel pity for someone else or empathy for someone else, now you're operating
yeah,
on higher and higher and higher frequencies.
right. Yeah, it's just an unconditional love is and non-judgment, true mercy and pity, forgiveness, acceptance, understanding, so overall kindness. Okay. And it's difficult in our world. This is not the world, just in my 60 some years, is not uh it's changed so much
Well, you're
in technologies and
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you off, but what you're saying
sure.
is also to protect your brain, right? So if you're focusing on integrating and, reaching higher dimensions by way of getting to different levels of frequency within your being, if you and
Mhm.
you're feeling love and compassion and all this stuff and you're doing great, which by the way is similar to like accepting Jesus Christ as your savior, or like walking with God, and all that stuff is, in my opinion, trying to put someone, if it's interpreted correctly, on a higher frequency, right? um
Yeah. Yeah. The
if you're
difference is that you do it individually, that the God is within.
Yeah, like
Okay.
it shouldn't be
Ultimately,
it shouldn't be, or religion really shouldn't be organized in general, is in essence what we're
right.
saying. But they're trying, the intent was good, I think,
I
because as
agree.
we
I
said,
for,
human
for
nature.
community, just for the community and community service.
Yeah.
And yeah, of
Hmm.
course, it's a beautiful intent.
Love yourself, love your neighbor like you love yourself. All these messages that are embedded within these religious doctrines, I think, are good. But anyway, the point in which you're making is that in today's world, if you're trying to walk this beautiful path and achieve ascension, and then all of a sudden you open up social media, it just, or any type of wave that you could be exposed to, it just ruins it for you. And then you kind of have to start from scratch and at the
Yeah,
beginning again.
I would highly recommend that anyone listening to this go right on to a browser that doesn't follow you and check blue light waves and the effect on the human mind and how much blue light is used for uh, mind control and Project Blue Beam. And just look into blue light, which comes from all LED lights. There was literally a push. Within 18 months, every person on the planet had a new LED flat screen TV because these are ways to literally brainwash people. And on your phone, yes, and but not, it's not just what you're looking at on the social media, it's how it's being portrayed through the light, blue light waves. Put a blue light blocker on all your phones, any tablet or TV that your children watch. They should not have those blue light waves interfering with the development of their brain. And these are just simple scientific facts that are available for everyone to know. And everyone should have a blue light blocker on both your TV, which there's a setting in all flat screen TVs to manage that, and as well as your other devices. So very simple things you can do to begin to control your own mind. And otherwise, these things sadly do exist. Wrote a recent blog on Havana syndrome and
Hmm.
psychotronics and radionics and the effects they have. They create what we call artifacts or lesions on the brain, for one, making you very sick. But then if it's anything that's sent through that type of energy, can send information and can send self-defeating thoughts. And
Hmm.
so now you have to be able to differentiate between what is your thought or what thought is just entering into your awareness. Is it something you thought? Is it something you were taught? What is real here? And they say that they can use these synthetic telepathies, is what they call them. Also, they can check online, and synthetic telepathy, patented in 2008 by the US Army. I have the patent numbers for all of these technologies that they're using. They're a real thing. Um, and so, why then is the question, Nicole? Why this push to control us? It's because that freedom of unfolding, that freedom of walking in that grace, that will take away uh, overall mentality of a society that are producers and consumers. Okay, they're just producing and consumers. So all
Hmm.
this external energy, it's all got to be a big house, this fancy, that, blah blah blah, right? And that's a very sad path, but it does keep people focused.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. Another thing that I wanted to discuss with you is you mentioned that when people have contact with extraterrestrials, they undergo a shift after. Like this communication or this contact or this experience that they have can fundamentally change them forever. Could
Changes
you,
your reality.
okay, so how does
Okay.
that, what happens? What
Okay,
happens?
so all of a sudden you find yourself face to face, eye to eye with a non-human being. Your reality has fundamentally shifted. Okay, in that moment, in that second, you will never, ever be the same. The moment you are face to face, eye to eye with a non-human being who is intelligent and is a humanoid, is creating some form of communication, your reality is shifted. and it expanded into a higher understanding that life does exist in many ways, in many places, and there are many different types of beings. Some people believe that all indigenous humans have varying degrees of brown hair, skin, and eyes. But it wasn't until the influx of the Anunnaki, who were tall blondes and redheads with green and blue eyes, that the first blue-eyed person was born on the earth 10 to 12,000 years ago. And we can show that. Up until then, blue eyes didn't exist. There were no blue-eyed people. There was no green-eyed. There was varying degrees of brown hair, skin, and eyes. We see right there an influx of extraterrestrial genetics through the hybridization of Homo sapiens and Anunnaki. And that has been continuous. So
And you're
we
saying the
can,
Anunnaki were extraterrestrial?
oh, absolutely. They were from the planet Nibiru. Yeah, the Anunnaki were not human. No, no. Anunnaki are extraterrestrials, and the Anunnaki are from a planet called Nibiru. And yeah, that's what has been taught to us by Zecharia Sitchin and many other people who have studied the ancient aliens. So we see that, yeah, the Anunnaki. So Marshall Clarfeld was a student of Zecharia Sitchin, and he was uh, really an under discovered jewel of American men. And he did a lot of work with the Anunnaki, and sadly spoke at Contact in the Desert and several times and wrote books. And several years ago, he passed away. And I have all of his research on the Anunnaki, and it was given to me after he died. And no, they're
Wow.
not human.
Okay,
Yeah, no.
so they're not human
Oh,
and they only integrated with humans 12,000 years ago?
yeah. Yeah, and that's where we see the our newest civilizations really stemming from that biblical sense on. Prior to that, there were several other Bibles. Moses has been interpreted in 5 different languages that were up to 2 to 5,000 years prior to the Moses that people would identify with today, the parting of the Red Sea and so forth. All of those, all of the same major parables or stories did translate from all through these multiple generations of different societies. A lot of people believe that there have been other great civilizations on the earth prior to this one. And it's really us who keep screwing it up. We'll fight over gold. And actually, gold is what the Anunnaki first came to the planet for. So, as I understand it, the planet Nibiru was having issues with their own tectonic plate system, creating destabilization in their atmosphere. And the Anunnaki came to Earth harvesting gold, which they turned into particulates, spraying them into their atmosphere. And that gold metal helped stabilize their atmosphere, which is really funny because somebody was asking me recently about chemtrails and what do I know about that. And I said, well, the only thing I know ever in history is the Anunnaki, outside of the humans right now who are blowing heavy metal particulates into the atmosphere and creating a weather pattern, which I'm not sure what that's doing to the stabilization of our planet, good or bad. But we do know that we're doing the same method
Hmm.
of blowing metal particulates into our atmosphere all around the world.
Why did
I
why
was
did
in
the sorry, why did the Anunnaki need gold particulates in their atmosphere?
I don't know. Whatever their atmosphere is not exactly the same as ours. Actually, it seemed like it had to, I don't know why I know or where I read it, but I believe their atmosphere has more of a goldish red tint to it to begin with, more like sunshine. But
So they came here looking
well,
for gold
they came here looking for gold and they
and
found it.
they had some babies while they were at it. And
And
that's where,
they found the daughters of man fair.
mhm.
And so they made it, creating another race of beings. And so much like when we see that in Genesis, where it says the sons with an S of the
Mhm.
gods with an S, which means lots of sons, no mention of daughters or mothers, but there must have been, there was. um, the sons of the gods found the daughters of man fair, and so they mated. And that particular race was the Nephilim, which were
The
giants,
giants.
yeah, burden to the resources of the planets. Whereas, the Anunnaki only might eat some of the apples. The Nephilim were going to eat the whole tree. Okay, so they were a burden, apparently, or so the story goes. But yeah, I mean,
But you were
the
saying
Anunnaki definitely.
you were saying how, okay, so now you come face to face with someone from a different being and
Yeah,
your entire reality has changed. And so what
absolutely.
happened? Can you talk about your patients? Like what happened to them after this?
Actually, so right after first contact like that, one of the first things that they notice is a huge spike in their energy where they are highly perceptive, telepathic, even definitely empathetic, or they're feeling tons of emotions, tons of emotional energy, and they are psychic. Some people, this lasts for 2 or 3 weeks. Some people that lasts forever. And it continues if they continue to develop it, because these are things that need to be actually worked on to develop, right? Just like anything. If you want to be a long distance runner, got to get out there jogging. You want to be a telepath, you need to practice sensing, moving the mind outside of the body, sensing into your environment, feeling both gross and subtle energies, and then differentiating where they hit your body so that you can interpret them. That's
And
important.
Lori, um when you do hypnotic regression therapy on your patients, did you ever speak to any of these beings?
Yeah. Yeah. All the time. So many times. And I do like the opportunity where I get a chance, because I've just got to drill them right with a list of questions. It's a great opportunity when I can get them to have the entity answer the questions. And so, one of the most interesting ones was where had the woman in a excellent trance. She had moved into an experience somewhat similar to an abduction, where she was taken against her will. And when she was on a craft, she was brought to a room, and they identified a batch or a lot number of which her genetics came from. And so the hybrids, which she was told she was to begin with, was a particular batch or lot number. And she showed the new hybrids being fed through a system that came from a ceiling down into, I guess, little bassinets that were sort of an acrylic plastic. She said they were see-through. She could see what into them. Funny thing is that the babies were all kinds of different looking babies. Okay, they weren't your standard hybrid Himalayan where you would see large eyes, but sort of a lighter complexion and hair. All right. Some um, had what could only be described as mini elephant looking trunks for the nose mouth area. Some were described as feline almost, like the eyes and the mouth was so cat-like that it was very off-putting and very difficult. It's like that uncanny feeling where it's just too weird. But so you have to ask, which I did, why the hybridization, why always humans involved.
You
Out
asked.
of all of the, yeah, I did have them ask that, yeah, because I want to know. And they said that the human holds strands of extraterrestrial DNA in us and have for hundreds of thousands of years. That all races can almost come and harvest almost any type. So the genetic strands of DNA were referred to as junk DNA. Junk DNA, something that would require no interest because it's junk. Yeah, just like a pig that has no spare ribs. We have no junk DNA. Okay. All of our DNA is relevant, whether it's active or dormant. That's the question. And so they're creating races of beings generally for self-preservation. One of the things is like the grays, for instance, look like a image that's been photocopied too many times and it's paling. Okay. So a lot of them are AI and emerging or interfacing of artificial intelligence and consciousness in a bot-like being. So the smaller grays are more AI. The taller grays more of a sentient being, and they have bad attitudes. They're really not an entity that you want to interact with, and that would be one you would want to disengage from. As I would say, in the hierarchy of beings, they would be under the human as their spirituality and their light does not shine like ours. They are agenda oriented and they look on us with great disdain.
And you've
They're so smug.
spoken, really? You've spoken to a gray?
I have. I've been face to face with more than one type of being. I'm not sure why.
Face to
I
face
guess,
yourself, not through
yeah,
hypnotic regret, not through,
yeah,
not,
yeah. In
okay.
in real life time, in real life time, in my full beta brainwave consciousness, just like I'm talking to you, I was fully aware and knowing that I was speaking to an extraterrestrial. And I was as calm and as strong and as curious as you could imagine. This actually threw them, not what they were expecting, as I had not yet understood that they had an agenda and it wasn't my innocent, oh boy, you
What
are
did,
real.
what did you say to them? How many were there?
Well, first there were two,
This
but
is
I
just the
was,
grays.
yeah,
Okay.
first there were two. And then after what I was too, I was not easily manipulated and they couldn't alter my consciousness. I was staying in my beta brainwave. Many extraterrestrials use what is called a delta brainwave transmitter, where they overlap two brainwaves to make a person simulate sleep, to think that they're dreaming. I wasn't in that state. I was very strong and awake and honestly just wanted to have some type of open communication. I had so many questions. And then I saw their big heads sort of tilt towards each other. And they were like, this is, she's not going with the program sort of look. And then don't know how to describe it outside of it's like beside them, it was like a white oval just opened and out walked a taller gray, just appeared right before me, taller. I'm 5'8", my height, and eye to eye with me. And so it was like that. I had to call in the manager. And
Mhm.
I was
They
that so
ran
they went and
into
got,
they ran into Karen.
I'm sorry, man. I was a
The
Karen
Karen
and
of the aliens.
uncooperative. I didn't cooperate, and they had to bring in the manager, and I was really cool. I was absolutely cool until I absolutely lost it. Um,
Hold
it
on. Hold on. What? Hold on. You were really cool and you were asking them questions. I want to know what that looks like. I want to know what you were asking them. And then you say you lost it. Let's get to that in a second. When you were really cool and you were asking them questions, what did you ask? What did they answer?
I wanted to know where they were from, who they were.
Did you ask
I
this?
wanted
Did you
to.
communicate telepathically or was
I
this
was.
full-blown
I think I
conversation?
was actually speaking, but
Okay.
they were speaking telepathically.
Mhm.
I think my mouth was moving. Okay. I was speaking. When that, and not, that's when they were not giving me any answers. Okay. They weren't answering anything. Okay. Although at one time I did feel like I felt like I saw M 31. And that's when, which is M is a class of planets. An M class planet supports life, right? So and 31, I didn't know, but I felt it like wash over me. And so, but that's when the manager showed up. And so the manager showed up just as I'm getting kind of telepathic, okay? Just as I'm getting something, right? The manager shows up and he's all pissed off. He had this like disdained look, and I again very cool. It took a step towards me, and I zoomed in on the hand, and the fingers were so long, and they were kind of like claw shaped as they wrapped around about a 10 or 12-inch long needle.
I want to
I
vomit.
then withdrew, pulling myself back. This is honest to God, I swear, my honest to God truth. I pulled back, trying to do like a reverse roundhouse kick and kick it out and recoil at the same time. And I know I was fighting now. It was now I felt like I was like under something heavy and I'm pushing consciously to stay alert. And my mind is like becoming milky. It was like I was whiting out, not blacking out, which
Mm.
because I've blacked out before, but I was whiting out. And I'm so weird because part of me is going, what is whiting out, right? Like as I'm like losing it.
Mhm.
But then I came to and woke up in my bedroom in excruciating pain. Later had to have surgery, tore my abdominal muscles in my lower left abdomen fighting that
From
tall gray.
fighting.
Yeah, because it was going to harvest. It was there to harvest genetics, eggs specifically at that time. So the grays, I know a lot of people say, oh, there are different types of grays, and my experience is, don't come like a thief in the night. All right, for one. Two, a little manners here. How about knocking on the door? And if you need an egg, I might have volunteered. Okay. We don't know that because I never got the opportunity. So they got a lot to learn about us for someone who thinks they're so superior to us. Right. I know, but and so my experience with them isn't great.
Okay,
Um,
so the Grays suck. Who else?
I think so.
Who else have you met?
A reptilian.
No fucking way. Lori, face to
Yeah.
face.
Yeah.
Okay, I hold on.
Yeah. I'm going to
Oh,
tell you something. I'm going to tell you the truth, Nicole. I was in a room uh, with about 10 other women. Okay. There was a reptilian standing at the door, and it had like I'm going to say security guard sash, like on, right? Felt like a security guard to me. And I don't mean to diminish him, whatever his role was. But all of a sudden, I shifted and I became like awake and alert. And I'm like, where am I? And I see a reptilian. I feel my heart like starts to beat so fast. And I'm breathing. I'm moving into this mantra I always say. It's like I'm one with the grand totality, right? Which is probably the right mantra to use at the time. Anyway, I walk over, I get up. All the other women look like they're in some type of weird trance. I get up, I walk over and I grab a book and I open it and I'm looking and I'm searching and I find me. I find my name. And I walk over to him and I said, see this? That's me. That's my name. You are not allowed to interfere with my bloodline. And I slammed the book. And I was furious, right? My energy was so projected when I realized I was in that book. And he was not to interfere with my bloodline, not me, not a descendant of me. And he backed away. And I and every woman walked out of there
My God.
into what I can only say felt like a hangar, like at an airport. Like if you ever been in a private airport, you know, my dad used to
Unfortunately,
take me to
not.
the airport.
Yeah.
Private airport? No, no, my dad. No, my dad had a little Cessna and parked it at the municipal airport when I was a kid, and so I'd be in the hangar, and it had that feeling.
Hold on. What room were you in with these women? Is this you mentioned earlier that you were fully conscious with the grays, but with the reptilian you weren't. You just found you woke up to this?
Yeah, I felt like I woke, I came to in a room. So I had been, it felt okay. So the reptilians work a lot with our own military. And we have what's called a MyLab. A MyLab is a military laboratory abduction. And it's when both the United States government and an extraterrestrial race abduct the same human. The humans that they abduct are humans whose bloodline has been abducted before, or humans who have displayed high levels of psychic energy, because
Which could
those
also be the
humans
same
are a
thing.
threat.
Okay. And so you were in one of these places. How did
I
you get
was.
home? After you all went into the room, you left the room and you felt like you were in a hangar.
So in in a military laboratory when they sedate you and then bring you back. It's generally in what always kind of looks like white transport vans.
And you woke up in your home, or you
Mhm.
remember coming home with them?
A little bit of both, Nicole. I think that my particular consciousness is hard to alter if I'm not willing. I had a major surgery last December. I woke up 3 times. They had my entire throat open
My God. And you woke up?
3 times and talked and told them. I told the doctor, I want to go home now. I'm done. I'm getting hot. And I said, and why am I tied down? And they're like, we strap everybody down in surgery so you don't wake up and try to hit us or something. And anyway, he tells them, put me out. I woke back up, saying blah, 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 a few more minutes. I'm like, you said that last time. He put her out. And yeah, 3 times. And he was like, damn. He said,
God.
because I desired
Yeah.
to go home. And just for the record, when we talk about emotions and emotional energy and what the humans need to do to work on, know this: desire is the strongest of human emotions. It does supersede love, because we did not love shelter. We desired shelter. We desired clothing. We desired to elevate ourselves into a civilized world. We desired that. We didn't love it. two different energies, but desire is what created everything that we have. Everything in your room, everything in this room, everything in our cities, desire.
I
We
mean, it
desired it.
literally creates human beings.
Yeah, we manifested it through
No, I
desire.
mean desire. Desire is
Yeah,
what
and desire
leads,
creates humans. That's right.
desire is what leads to, the
Yeah, there's
birds and the
yeah,
bees.
yeah, yes, there is that other level of desire.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Oh my
And that's
God.
also an instinctual procreation to,
Well, it's the
go
life
forth.
force, so
Yeah.
it's gonna be stronger than all of us, I would say.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
I mean,
So
it's
that's
our
pretty cool, isn't it?
survival depends on it. So that's why I tell people, like relax, give yourself a break if you slip.
Mhm.
Um, but
So like what other
what
people are
else?
talking about, sorry.
I was gonna ask you if you've encountered it, like, do you have more stories? I want to hear all of them.
Oh my God. Yeah. So here's the best thing, okay? And this is from the time I was a little girl, what I did see was sort of this silhouette of a sort of a soft cosmic violet entity. Always felt feminine. I perceived them. One time when I was 6 years old, I woke up in the middle of the night and looked out my window and saw two gray aliens in the driveway walking my brother. And I was going to knock on the window to tell my brother wasn't dressed right for winter. And they really
That
drill
was
that
your
into you when
thought.
you,
Yeah.
hey, I'm a Canadian, and they drill that into us, man, from the time we can walk, how we're going to freeze to death. And anyway,
Mhm.
if we have to wear all this. So I'm going to tell my brother he's not dressed correctly. And the violet ones sort of appeared behind me. They told me to step back from my window. When I was about 14, I said out loud, okay, listen, I've sensed you, I've seen you. And if I'm going to feel you and believe you, I need to know that it's real. So I'm going to put my hand out and you have to touch me. If you do touch me, then I'm going to believe that you're real. If I feel nothing, then I'm going to think that I'm hallucinating, that there's something wrong with me, that I'm seeing this and feeling this. And I put my hand out, and sure enough, I feel this beautiful warmth, clasp my hand, and I pull my hand back. I'm like, okay, 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 okay. I believe you. I believe you. Okay, I got a little bit more than I bargained for right there, and but that shifted. But it was when I was 30. I had done all that emotional work that I talked about.
Mhm.
I was as calm and grounded as I've ever been in my life. And one night, I had packed brown bag lunches and they were in the fridge for my kids to go to school. They were both in bed, and I was picking up wet towels from their baths. I was doing last load of laundry. And as I'm walking down the hall out of my bedroom with a laundry basket hooked on my hip, I hear Laurie, and I'm like, Laurie, Laurie. So the third Laurie, I turn around and there they are, right there, right in front of me. Three as tall as my ceiling, because I looked up, violet silhouettes of three beings. And as I looked to them, it's like the wall disintegrated. I could see like deep space behind them. And they said, you passed. I said, I died? And they said, no, you passed. And I nodded like, yes, there's another definition. And they said, are you afraid? And I said, no. They said, do you want to see? And I said, I do. And in that moment, they sort of wrapped me in this violet energy of them. And I began to ascend. And I moved with them. And I could feel every layer of the atmosphere. And I went, and then I couldn't go any further. And everything was black, as dark as could be. And there was something in front of me, evaluating, judging me. I couldn't see it, but I could only feel it. And I was about as open and innocent as any 5-year-old. And I'm like, this is me, sort of. And I could feel the violet ones behind me. And after a moment of evaluation, I literally burst into space. And I looked down to see where my body was, and there was nothing but stars and planets. And I said to them, how can this be? I'm just Laurie. How is this? And I said, because I'm still Laurie. And they said, nothing. They then laughed in this beautiful laughter that sort of vibrated the very essence of me. And I began to understand. And then I looked to the left and to the right, and there was like light years between my eyes. And I was understanding the fourth, and I was understanding the fifth dimension. And there in the distance was this beautiful golden, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was a planet or a portal, but with the fluidity of thought, I moved through space and I was going through, and they rushed like to catch up with me because I was like a child that was running, like, no, I was like a horse running to the barn. Okay. And I just was gone with such speed, and they caught up with me and they said, wait, what about Ryan? That is my son. And I felt this gravitational pull, like magnetic pull. I felt this magnetic pull back to the earth, back into my home. And there they were, back into my room, right where we started. And they were leaving me now. And I said, wait, please don't go. I said, I don't even know your name. Please come back. And 3 nights later, they came back. And then I saw. And now,
What did
when
you
I say,
see? What does that
I
mean? And then
saw,
I saw.
I saw and felt the golden age, okay, the a new earth, a better home. I saw all that ever was, all that is, and all that ever could be.
And you're sure you weren't on DMT? Because this sounds like you were tripping. This sounds like a
I've never
crazy
done
story.
acid. I've never done DMT. I've never done ayahuasca. I do like to smoke some marijuana now and then, but I have not done any of those other drugs. In fact, my neurosurgeon recommended that I smoke it because I'm allergic to opiates and antibiotics. Actually, a lot of experiencers are. That's one of the commonalities. There's a list of things that people have in common that interact with these beings, and being allergic to certain things is one of them. And yeah, it's very interesting. The commonalities are mind blowing.
That's an insane story. And I'm sure it's not your last. And I'm just so
No.
I have so many questions. You mentioned earlier, like we're always trying to figure out like, how they get here. Do they have this technology, this crazy technology? But is it just as simple as the parallel universes that you mentioned earlier?
So I do believe in the multiverse theory in math. Does appear that for each thought we have, it can be played out in a parallel universe. So if there is another you and I having a very similar conversation like this, in say this is Earth Prime 101, okay? And it's on 102 or 100. There may be slight differences. I think that maybe the next step we might have is in integrating the parallel selves and drawing in on our higher frequency energies to integrate into a solid being so that we can collapse the probable timelines of existence. And I think that might be one of the ways when we are talking about our human attainment, being the best person, incorporating that frequency, that higher frequency emotional energy. I think that that does and can go past both time and space. And really, just like the AM FM radio analogy, it's all just right here, right in front of us. So,
Tune in.
that being said, we have to ask, when we do talk about reality, and as good researchers, we have to also take into consideration other theories and hypotheses like simulated realities or simulation theories and so forth, or projection of consciousness into a manifested reality for our own learning. That's highly probable. I mean, when I was 10.
Wait, sorry, before this story, I'm gonna get back to
Okay.
it. But just to
Okay.
kind of, elaborate on the discussion we're having right now. You mentioned that there are commonalities in people that have had contact and have had experience. And one of those commonalities is this, you said, to tune in to another station, like people with psychic abilities, people with who are just connected to, they call it the other side. So isn't it just possible that people who have had contact are people who are, more in tune and could via frequency, which is, you mentioned how you traveled, you know, have these experiences, and that's kind of the ticket of how to get into this other dimension. You're not going into, you may not be going into outer space physically in this three-dimensional world. You're traveling with your spirit.
Yeah. Okay. So, um,
Now I sound
parallel
like I'm
uni-
high.
well, when you start talking about parallel universes and parallel existences and collapsing probable timelines and integrating that into the true self, right? I mean, it can sound a little bit trippy, but it does appear that parallel universes do exist. And what can happen is a slight collision or bumping, like two bubbles touching or kissing, would create a bleed through or a gentle overlapping, where there's now a merging of two universes, creating one consciousness, hence the Mandela effect, where in one universe or probable timeline, people believed that in the movie Star Wars, he said, Luke, I am your father, where of course that doesn't exist now. When my kids used to run around the house going, Luke, I am your father.
Into the fan. I used to do that.
Yeah, but that's not in the movie because
Yeah.
they say that never happened. Just like, I mean, some people believe that they remember Tinkerbell in the Disney movies dotting the I when it said Disney over the castle. I remember that. People in my generation remember that, but our history shows that that never happened. So, how do we explain these things? So, is it a kissing or blending of two universes? Is it an erasing of history? Is it an artificial intelligence creating some type of weirdness? Is it CERN? I mean, there's always all of these questions with the parallel universes, but I ran into myself once in a dream, and I was, of
Is
all
this when you
places,
were
at an
10 years
airport.
old?
No,
Oh, okay, it's a different
this
story.
I was married and an adult, and I had this lucid dream. I was at an airport, and I was watching the moving sidewalk, and there I was on it, and I ran after me, and I said, "Hey, you're me, I'm you," and she said, "Yeah, that's right, but we're not supposed to talk about it." And off she went, and that was my first sort of indicator that, first off, she was a little shinier than me. So I didn't know if that I'd just run into my higher self. Is it like a parallel self? But that had certainly opened a door. Now, the story I was going to tell you, when I was 10, I was outside and my like head tilted back, eyes wide and intent on the sky. And I had finished this grid that I made out of masking tape and um, string, and I was charting planets as they move through the constellations on my window pane. I created my own grid system for it. So I was outside and I was looking up, and I'm 10, and I just said, what am I? And I heard in this loud voice, although it was loud and powerful, it wasn't intimidating at all. It said, you are a reflection. And for 50 some years now, I had contemplated the heck does that mean? Right? I am a reflection. So, I have taken this a couple of different ways. What does this mean? But it does sort of tie into a higher consciousness reflecting or manifesting its light into another existence to play out certain energies to see how we will evolve to a higher place. Oh,
I wish I
it's
had a
very
joint.
complicated.
Wish I had a joint right now. I wish I had a joint right now. I want to do this for the rest of the night.
Oh, wow. Yeah. There's just, I've had to wonder sometimes, why have I personally, had these experiences? But it was when I was 50 years old that my birth mother called me, and, she said, is this Laurie? Like, yes. And she's like, I'm your mother. And I'm like, are you now?
That was
And
the first time you heard from her?
no, I hadn't first time in decades, and I wouldn't have recognized her if I saw her in the street. That's the truth. I no relationship, don't really know her, but she said, Joe, I just saw a TV show you did, and called Topic UFO. And I said, yes. And she said, well, I want to tell you the story of your birth and why I couldn't keep you, why I couldn't raise you. And I said, okay, well, let me put you on hold for a minute. And I ran to get my husband and sat him down and put her on speaker, and we recorded her conversation. And she had said that, first off, she said, um, she's so happy that I run an experiencer group, a support group to help people who struggle with these things, because it is challenging to have your reality challenged. And she said that while she was pregnant with me, and only while she was pregnant with me, and I was her fourth child, that she had been visited by extraterrestrials, and that they would take her and do examinations on her. And when she would get very scared, they would tell her to not be afraid, that everything was okay, that they weren't hurting her. They were interested in the baby. They were only interested in the baby. And so she told everybody what was happening. And of course, this is in the early 60s, and they told her she was crazy. Um, she went to a therapist. Her doctor told her it was hormonal. But he suggested she go to a therapist, and the therapist finally said, we can't really find anything wrong with you, but maybe just don't talk about this anymore because you might risk perhaps losing your other kids. So she started writing it down, and she asked me, could she give me the journals that she kept of the experiences while she was pregnant. She said on the last one, um, she had gone outside early in the morning because she was hot, and very early, like 5 or so. And as she sat down on a lawn chair in the backyard, she said just instantly two beings appeared on either side, not grays. And she went with them through the apple orchard, but she said it was kind of like she felt like she was levitated a bit as she moved forward through the orchard. And then in the center of the apple orchard, there's a clearing. It's where the tractors turn around during harvest. And she said right above that, she could see a UFO. And as she saw it, she was on the UFO, and she remembered her feet feeling cold. And then she was laying on a bed. And this was the first time I interrupted her. And I said, well, she said she was laying on a table. And I said, well, what kind of table were you laying on? And she said, oh, honey, It was shaped like an ironing board. Well, she obviously doesn't know me because I said, okay, it's like shaped like an ironing board. Okay, so she carries on and she says they're behind her. She's scared. They're telling her they're checking on the baby. And she said then she heard this loud popping sound, almost like a cracking sound in her head. And she started to hurt. And they calmed her down. She went through just a plethora of physical examinations at this point, some painful, but they always moved her out of that. And then she woke up or came to in the backyard, in the grass, bleeding both vaginally and from the nose, in full labor, crying out for help. No one in the house woke up. They couldn't hear her because they sedate the house when they take someone. The neighbors heard and they came and got her and woke my father, and they then took her to the hospital where I was born. And she said I was, you know, it was hard for her. My parents are very short, jet black hair and brown eyes. And she said I scared her. And also, I couldn't drink milk or breast milk or soy milk or goat milk or I hate milk. Still, actually, I hate milk. But she said it was very difficult and she had a really hard time that she could never bond with me. And so she tells me this story. And so I felt compassion for this woman who had these experiences and had nobody to listen to or believe her or guide her or talk to her or help her. No support group, right? So she said maybe things could have been different for her, for me, if something like that existed back then. And maybe I would have been able to have a mother if something like that existed back then, but I never did. I did raise myself because she gave me up. And so she said, she wants to tell people now she's not going to hold this anymore. And so at the time, I was talking to a man by the name of Jim O'Connell. He was a producer of a show called The Experiencers that was going to air on Fox. And I called him up and said, you're not going to believe this, but, my birth mother was an experiencer. I might be like the first, second generational experiencer. And I said, but she wants to be able to speak her truth now. And I'm wondering, like, if we could have her come on the show and just give her this opportunity to speak her truth without feeling alienated, no pun intended, or feeling ridiculed or shamed into expressing an experience that she had. And he thought that that was a great idea. And the two of them connected and they talked all summer. And then I get this phone call and they say, you have got to come home right now. If you want to see your mother alive, she just suffered a brain aneurysm followed by a stroke. So I really walked out the door while booking a flight and ordering a car to meet me at the airport in Detroit. And I had the car take me over the border to the hospital in Canada. And the surgeon was just wheeling her down into surgery. And he said that she had a 15% chance. They had to coil her brain. And she did survive the surgery, but she was never able to speak correctly again. She couldn't speak right. She couldn't say, like, if it's 4 o'clock, she would say it's $4. Like, it was the wires were crossed, and she couldn't now speak her truth. So it was devastating. I was like, oh my God, I just can't believe this is happening. Then, after weeks in Canada, I get home. I turn on some social media, and Alanis Fox, internet reporter, I read her article. Says headline was Jim O'Connell, a producer of Experiencer, mysteriously died in his sleep.
Oh my God.
And
My whole
that was
body just got
that.
the goosebumps. What do you
So
think? So you believe there was foul play?
I don't know.
I'm
She
so sorry,
still
Lori.
can't talk. Thank you. And Jim, you know, he wasn't sick, and he was cremated within 24 hours. His death.
Oh my God.
So I don't know. Um, it's one of those things, okay? You just don't know why or what, but maybe somebody didn't want her to speak her truth and then have me stand beside her and say, this is who I am. These are my experiences. From the time I was a child, I've had some
From the time you
beautiful,
were in utero, technically.
yeah, before I was born, they were already interested in whatever. It's really funny because I hear all the time. And just last week, I have somebody, I think she posted some of it on Instagram where I have her in a regressed stage. And she said, oh, and the beings want you to know that they know about you.
Hmm.
I hear that all the time. They know about you. They know you. I'm like, okay, I know
Lori,
some of them.
Lori,
Don't know what that means.
do you think that I mean, you mentioned everyone has extraterrestrial DNA. Do you think
Yeah.
that perhaps you have way more of it than your average person?
Um,
And maybe that's why they're interested in you?
Perhaps. Or maybe they're interested in the thousands of people that I'm going to personally be able to redirect to give them peace and hope, knowledge and understanding and support about things that are difficult to wrap your mind around that can create confusion and fear, that I can make that fear go away and empower them and make them feel okay again so that they can continue on their own journey. Maybe they wanted me to do that. I don't know. Listen, I'll tell you this. I didn't think that when I was a young woman that I would have a career in where so much of it is dealing with mega phenomena and phenomenology and ufology and spirituality. I knew that I would be in service of the humans, that I love the humans. I knew that I'd always be in service, but I didn't know on what level. So
I mean, don't you have, I feel like you've had these questions for yourself, but from what you're telling me, it sounds like it's all meant to be. I don't think you accidentally fell into this line of work.
no. And it's good that people understand the difference between fate and destiny.
Mm.
As we all have a destiny, we're all destined to do something. Fate is the circumstances of your life, things that happen to you outside of your power, outside of your will, outside of your desire, outside of your personal strength. Sometimes things happen, that's circumstances of your life, but it's not your life. It's not an indicator of who you are or what you can do. You have a destiny that you need to elevate your awareness into and move towards that. We all have a purpose and we all have a similar purpose, and that is to move forward. The way of the universe is in a state of expansion. We are to continuously expand our thoughts, our minds, our hearts. This is the way forward movement. We don't want to become stuck or stale into these old belief systems or dogma that create fear and insecurity. It's okay to accept your power and begin to unfold. It's okay to question reality. It's also okay not to have all the answers.
We touched on Charles Hall and the experiments that they did with him. You mentioned it to me.
Yeah, yeah. My lab, though, there's a little bit different. It's a full category of abduction. So it's a separate category of abduction because it involves humans as well. And so there's a large percentage of abduction experiencers where they can see a human, um, as well as, say, a gray, perhaps even a taller mantis being in the background. Mantis seem to appear in many of these abductions. Again, it's a hierarchy, and they're the ones in charge. Mantis beings, I've tried to do some psychological profiling of extraterrestrial races based on the eyewitness accounts of the experiencers. So I interview them like a witness, and so I get the information so I can try to figure out anything about the extraterrestrial. So we have learned quite a bit, the hive-minded energy of the grays, the hive-minded energy of the mantis. But the mantis, they have this ability to look into us so deeply. It's like they're so penetrating into you that they see, it feels like they see your entire soul, that you're so entirely exposed. But what they are insecure about is their own individuality, because they are so hive minded that the thought of individuality is terrifying to them. It would be like maybe a human equating it to being isolated on a desert island all alone. That's how their energy feels. It's that type of thing, just to be individual, to be separate from the hive mind. But the hive mind's kind of like the internet, all right? Yes, they're all connected. And so there is a large aspect of it, which is artificial intelligence, the whole AI thing. You can tell the difference when you're talking to them,
Mm-hmm. What
because
other
they're programmed to only do certain things.
types of beings are there?
Oh my gosh. So,
Wait, but you were saying something about my lab.
oh yeah, the MyLab. Oh, so the MyLab always, like I said, has more than one type of being, generally at least three types of beings. We've learned lots though. Like the reptilians are highly interested in our sexuality. And they even interfere with some human emotions, trying to get people to fight, because they're sparking emissions of energy. So much like when I hook up someone to an EEG machine to do a regression, we're going to monitor their brain waves on a tablet, right? If those brain waves aren't being pushed through an electrode so that I can read them on a tablet, they're emissions, okay, that are moving out into the atmosphere. And so with those emissions, they accumulate them, they harvest them, and basically use them as energy, because there are expelled energy through thought or fear or any spite. So they're very interested in our sexuality, and I just don't think that it has anything to do with procreation either. So the oddest thing, Nicole, is I've had a handful of people only come to me saying that they're having sexual relations with reptilians, and they like it a lot, but they know it's wrong.
What do reptilians look like?
Just what you would think. A reptilian, a scaled human, uh, face, arms, limbs, but different textured skin and different shaped eyes and different shaped pupils, reptilian pupils, like you would see on a reptoid. And this is when I say, so the grays look like our ants, if ants were people. The reptilians look like our reptiles. The mantis look like a praying mantis. The felines look like our cats. The every other humanoid, if you want to say a Pleiadian, looks like me. Apparently, I look like a Pleiadian. I'm not. I don't feel any energy towards that. If anything, I would say Andromedan would be the planet or star system that I feel
Connected to?
hmm, curious, at least. Maybe not completely connected because right now I highly honor and value the humans. And right now, whether I'm a hybrid or not, I am appearing as a human. And the humans, they really are powerful, beautiful race of beings that have just been misguided, manipulated, and they need to shake it off and find their power.
Why are we such suckers? What's going on?
We're just innocent, okay? We're just, and part of that ascension process, I have to say that there's a level of innocence. Like when those violet beings, which feel more like angelic entities or light beings, and I don't know the appropriate verbiage, but whatever they are, um, they'd be the epitome of what one would think is be the highest of loving angels. But the truth is, angels have always come bearing swords, fighting and creating wars, and are not the loving beings that we think. A cherub isn't a fat little baby, it's a 6 to 7 foot tall being with powerful, black, thunderous wings. That's what a cherub looks like. I mean, nothing at all how it's portrayed. It's a complete opposite of how it's portrayed, you
And
know.
how do you have this information about my labs? Is it my lab or
Well,
my labs?
MILAB,
My lab,
MILAB,
military lab.
military laboratory. Well, I've worked with many um, abductees that were our MILAB abductions, and there's a lot of information about this. Is certainly not a new thing. This has been going on for a long time. A lot of people have had MILABs. In fact, here's one of the weird things that have come out of the military laboratory abductions is what people refer to as super soldiers, which again sort of aligns with enhanced psychism because we have seen where we have I believe it's adrenaline bursts that give us super strength or super clarity of thought or even super speed, where we have well documented cases of people lifting automobiles or tractors with one hand while they pull their baby out or their loved one or with a farm hand, whatever it happens to be. So, how is it that we're able to do that under these circumstances? Many documented cases. So it's spiked adrenaline, I believe. Okay, for one. So it's hormonal. So, so there's something about the human that say we are completely aligned and empowered. Does that mean that at will, then we could lift a car with a single hand? That we could process vast amounts of information that's being downloaded into our consciousness or that and have this clarity of understanding, or also we've seen speed. But one of the most interesting ones was a Canadian who um, skydiving, his suit parachute didn't open, neither did the backup one. And as he's hurtling towards the ground on cameras, because it was a school, this was a practice thing, um, he screams in his mind, stop. And about 18 inches before the ground, he sort of wobbles, stops, hovers, and gently lands on the ground. You know, the CIA were all over that like white on rice, let me tell you. And he came out and did lots of interviews and talked about it. And he did it again. He tested it and did it again. And he said he wouldn't do it a third time, but that would just be stupid. I thought the second time, but it's just shows you it's belief and it's focus and control. Those are the two words. In fact, I say those words not because they came to me, but because they were given to me by those violet beings. One of the first things they helped me learn to do was focus and control my mind and thoughts. And like I said, I was doing really good. but, but I've had a few moments where I've totally lost my crap because, oops, I wasn't expecting that. And there is this aspect of innocence, and in my interactions, I was innocent. I had no knowledge of what they could do or what they wanted. I really didn't. I was pretty innocent, and they were just harvesting genetics.
So fucking crazy. I don't know, Lori. I mean, I speak to you and I believe, and then I keep going back and forth because you're a person that I trust so much. So when you tell me about these things, like I obviously believe you. I just there are things out there though that make me question, and sometimes I'm just all in, and then other times I'm like, this is total bullshit, and I don't know why.
Well, there's a lot of bullshit out there. Okay, so there are no blue avions. That's 100% bullshit, made up crap. Made up by Corey Good and David Wilcock. They got busted on the set by a producer friend of mine on the set at Gaia.
Mm,
Okay. And they're saying, well, what if we just say the blue, and what if we say they look like this? Was it? And she was standing behind, anyway, they've gone to court, and Corey Good admitted to making the whole bullshit up. I'm scrolling and I come across some podcast and the girl saying, "Oh, my guides are blue avions," and I'm like, "Blue avions don't exist. I'm
hmm.
sorry." Blah 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 blah. This is very verifiable information. I'm not trying to, I'm telling you the truth here. Okay, so why, whatever you think that, say, come back and go out. Well, the ones that we're talking about exist in the etheric realm. I'm like, I don't think you understand the etheric realm. Okay,
Hmm.
just like, oh God. And so there's no blue avions. There's no freaking Arcturians. All right, all of that is bullshit. Okay, what the ones that are out there are very basic, and they all seem to look like they come from our biosphere. They're either human-like, cat-like, ant-like, reptilian-like, mantis-like. So there's that. Okay, so maybe we are holding some super genes. I don't know. I don't. I really don't know.
I mean,
But
but some of these
trust.
stories are laughable, you
Oh,
know?
and there is a lot of bullshit out there, and I call them too. Like I'm the first one to say, yeah, yeah, no, that's not how it works. That's not right. You're being misled. Let's figure out why and how that happened, and we'll get to the root of it. And I'm going to help them anyway. Okay. Some I've had people put into rehab centers because they're delusional, based on either alcohol or drugs, and I can differentiate and get them the help that they need. All right. But then there are people who have some level of megalomania, or the grandiose ideas, and they want this to be true for them. I didn't want any of this, never asked for any of it, had no idea, and questioned many times. I'm pretty smart, and I'd be remiss if I didn't go, okay, well, if could I be a product of some blue beam? Could they be messing, with my implanting this information through synthetic telepathy, which you want to Google later, in psychotronics, but uh, and so,
So sometimes you think that about yourself.
well, except that, oh yeah, I definitely had to rule it out. Okay, I did rule it out based on my first like full on visual, that I can definitely articulate clearly at around 5. Okay.
Hmm. Well,
Prior to that, what, go
instead
ahead.
of instead of Googling, can you tell us about
What's in,
synthetic?
Yeah, synthetic telepathy is a form of technology created by the United States government where they dial in your frequency. Just like I said, we all have an electronic or signature, and all they have to do is they can direct beam energy right at you and give you thoughts in your head that aren't yours. I'm going to tell you what, I don't know, maybe it was 7 years ago, maybe longer. I was researching psychotronics. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was upstairs in my office, big balcony outside of the office that runs the length. And sometimes when I'm really thinking, I'm pacing. So I'm out there pacing, and I get back and I'm working on three devices, two laptops and a tablet, and I'm working on all three of them. And I'm researching psychotronics. My mind is blowing, right? And all of a sudden, I hear in my head, you have no business researching psychotronics. And my hands, like, I pulled them back from the keyboard and shook it off because it was a man's voice, right? I shook it off, went back, continued to research. Then they come with this string of negative, you're no good, you're nothing, but all this horrible stuff. Um, I close my stuff and I walk down the hall. I sit on the edge of my bed and I sat up straight and I went, wait a minute, not in a million years would I think that. Because one of the things they said was, you're not even a good hypnotherapist. And that's when I was like, draw the line there. That stuff could be true, but absolutely not. Here's what I believe that. And so by taking back the control over my did I send you that stuff on psychotronics?
No.
I wrote a blog on it just recently, a couple of weeks ago. Let me see if I can pull it. I'll email it to you because that information is important.
But
And this stuff,
what is psychotronics?
psychotronics is the manipulation of electronic energy to be beamed at a person individually or into groups of people. So they would maybe like beam a group at a concert or at a rally or a protest. Psychotronics, radionics, voice to skull communication, synthetic telepathy, all of these things are forms of technology used to brainwash people. It's kind of like the Manchurian Candidate. They send them the messages through what would used to be hypnotic suggestions, but now they can bypass that and move right into your brain. In fact, there are technologies outside of this, like listening devices. So people put in iPods in their ear. You're picking up other
Mhm.
signals. They have RFDI chips in them. You don't need an RFDI chip into stuff like some of the chips that they're using. It's receiving information that's unnecessary or monitoring. There's all kinds of stuff happening right now with technology. When I tell people, if you don't learn how to control your mind right now, there's a very good chance somebody else will gladly do it for you. They will. And it might look like they're only making you buy this product or believe this about religion or politics. Okay, so they'll use it to manipulate on that level. But we have to really look at how this is even legal and how this is even being
Probably
allowed.
not.
Well, unfortunately, since the 1970s, the United States government is allowed to use the citizens for any type of experimentation ever since the Agent Orange issues from Vietnam. And so they can do that. Redwood City here in California and another place in Colorado have recently created legislation stating that in their airspace, they don't want direct energy weapons, chemtrails, and or any other form of psychotronics. I mean, did you get my email?
Yeah, I
Did you
got
know you
it.
were recording? Okay. Yeah, so it has my blog, and so you can see. I've also added a list of resources for people that are being affected by this. They're called TIs, or targeted individuals. And they say that they receive some type of electrical shock, making them ill or sick or nauseous, headaches, all kinds of psychological issues.
I'm really happy that you have a section on how to protect yourself from all this stuff. So thank you.
Yeah. So check out my blog at my website at truehypnotherapy.com.
Hit that like button and subscribe.